morning, Washington Heights. Let's stand and sing some songs. Come, let us worship our King. Come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. Let's see what our Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. Oh! You've been faithful through every storm. You'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things. And I know you will do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. God, you do great things. Here we go. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Come on, sing it out. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You have done great things. Oh God, you have done great things. Amen. Well, good morning. Welcome to Washington Heights Church. My name is Mike. I'm one of the pastors here and just blessed to be up here singing with you guys. You guys sound awesome today. A couple quick things, and then we will sing a few more. If you're new and joining us for the first time, or maybe watching us online or joining us out in the theater, just welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Can we give our first-timers just a round of applause? Just thanks for being here. We're just so blessed that you chose to be here on a Sunday morning. You may have noticed in the chair in front of you, or if you're here in the front, right next to you, a program. And inside that program is a thing we call a connection card. That's our way to be able to stay connected with you. If you want to fill that out, you can let us know things going on in your life. We would love to pray for those things. Or if you want to get connected and plugged in here at Washington Heights Church, that's the way to do that. You can mark those boxes, and then there are boxes in the back of the room. You can drop those off on your way out after service. We would, if you're new and joining us, we have a little gift that we would love to give you. Just a simple thanks for being with us today. It's a little book called How Good is Good Enough. It's a fantastic read. Strongly recommend picking that up, and you can find that at each one of your exits. You ready to sing a few more? All right, here we go. I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in the darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. Sing it out. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, surrendered now, I give you everything. on, all the voices, sing that out. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. Amen. You guys can go and have a seat.
Amen. Thanks, Mike. You know, we've come to a Sunday where we celebrate what Christ has done for you and for me. I was hiking yesterday. How many loved the weather yesterday? Absolutely beautiful. And so I decided to go up on a trail, and you know, when you're going up that trail and it's a beautiful day, but it's still, you know, I'm climbing the mountain. There's about 100 things out there that could kill me, right? I mean, I'm in the ice still. There's rocks, trees. And as I'm thinking, well, in the world, there's probably millions of things that can kill me. I mean, viruses, accidents, diseases, it just comes right and left. I'm like, what sustains me? If there's millions of things that can take my life, what is the one thing that can keep my life? It's Jesus. That's what he's done. And I'm thinking, you know, well, what about the next life? What sustains me? Just to make sure I'm in the right place, in the right environment with everyone. How many here have ever had to say you're sorry? Okay. How many here are married? How many times you say it? All the time we do, don't we? Because we know that there's something broken in us, that something separates us. And we know we have to say sorry to our spouse. There's something there that we have to ask forgiveness to restore it. And so how many things does it take to separate this relationship? Not millions. One thing to separate us from what God has done for each one of us. But there is the one, right? The one who can restore us. So this morning, we celebrate what Christ has done for you and for me. It's not through anything we do. It's not through any religion. It's all about that relationship of accepting the one who has restored our relationship with God. Not only in this life, right? But in the life to come. He sustains us. And so as you receive the bread and the cup, we ask you to hang on to it so we can partake together. Just remember, this is not a table of Washington Heights. It's a table for all those who have accepted and celebrate what Christ has done, recognizing he is the one. So partake with us to celebrate that we can enjoy that relationship when we're restored. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you for your grace and mercy, for all you've done for each one of us. Thank you that you're a God who restores. You love us despite who we are. You have brought a place to where we are separated from you, right back to you. So, Father, may we celebrate that and take a moment to think about all the wonderful things that you have done for us and how much you love each one of us. Be with us, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Can't go back to the beginning. I can't control what tomorrow will bring. But I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. You come, will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here as I walk now through the valley. Let your love rise above every fear, like the sun shaping the shadow. In my weakness, your glory appears. And I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Oh. Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, drive bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. And not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, drive bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? One more time, sing that out. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again?
On that night, Jesus took the bread and he broke it. He said, "This is my body which has been broken for you. As often you partake of this, do this in remembrance of me." That same night, he took the cup. He says, "This is my new covenant. This is the thing that brings you back to me, that restores that relationship. As often as you drink of this, do this in remembrance of me." Would you pray with me? Father, thank you for your grace. Thank you that you are a God of restoration. You've restored us all back in that relationship with you and with each other. Help us to serve you, to love you, to know you with more enthusiasm because of what you've done. It's not about our deeds. It's all about that grace and mercy that you've extended our way. May we walk in that, love you more, and love each other more. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. If you take a moment and just pass your cups to the nearest aisle. Thank you.
I'm a 10th grader in high school, and this is my story of how I came to God. I didn't grow up in the greatest place. I grew up with my Nana, and my mom and dad weren't really in my life. I knew that I always had a connection with God, but it just never really felt like he was there for me when I needed him. So 9th grade came around, and my friend Paula had invited me to go to Washington Heights Church. The people there were amazing, the service was amazing, and it was just all in all a great experience. They had mentioned this place called Hume Lake in California. And so I had told my Nana about it, and she said, yeah. So we get on the buses and we say our goodbyes, and I'm just ready to go on this trip. Once we get there, I get this big feeling that something big is gonna happen. So we get off and I start meeting new people. The area is absolutely beautiful and I'm just having a great time already. Then service comes. And the band is amazing, everybody's singing and praising, and then the pastor comes out. And just every word that he says gave me chills. Then he softly said, if you are ready to accept God in your life, stand up. And I finally realized what that feeling was that I've been having all day. God has been telling me to stand up. So I stood up, and it felt like all the weight was off my shoulders right then and there. Just as if all my sins were forgiven. I've never felt closer to God, as if he was just there for me. After that, I just realized that all these wonderful people and all of these amazing experiences and the beautiful view that we had was all thanks to God. He's so much more than you could ever imagine. He will help you in life by leaps and bounds. Just praying every day helps so much, and just kind of really connecting with him when you really need that help. It's amazing at what he can do, because in my life, I didn't start out great whatsoever, but yet here I am. He's just influenced my life to be good rather than to look at the bad.
And I think Lillian's story has relevance no matter who we are here today, because I think, we're in one of two places. One is that opportunity to recognize that there is a real God who has invited me into a relationship with him. And maybe you've never stepped across that line of faith and trust. And who knows, maybe today's that day. But if you have done that, there's also a relationship on the other side of that, a journey with God that begins the moment we trust him. And in that space, there is something that we always have to learn, to understand, to apply, to live out, to make real, and to experience. And it's not turning over a new leaf, it's a whole new life that's found in him. And so all of us, I think, in this room, we're in one of those two places, and our hope and our prayers that today draws us a little bit closer to him and helps us take a step in that direction. And if you wonder, well, how do I grow? There are probably 100 different answers to that question. But as we're gathered here together on Sundays, let me give you one thought, one suggestion about that. One of the ways that we grow is by using the gifts and talents and abilities that God's entrusted to us. And we serve each other and we honor him with that. And if you've never considered this before, I might suggest attend one and serve one. We've got the 3 services now, 8, 9:30, and 11. And you're here at 11, that's awesome. Maybe get plugged in and help make it happen for somebody else. It's one of the ways that God grows us and transforms us. Another step in that direction is recognizing that all of life is an opportunity to honor and worship God. Relationship with God is not confined to 1 hour on a Sunday morning. It can be something that happens every day, all the time. And everything that we have in this life has come from God. And as we respond to that, there are many different ways to do that. Maybe even with our resources, that we would take a step in the area of generosity. And if you came prepared to give today, there are some boxes back by the doors how you can do that. There are also some electronic means that you can utilize. But there is this journey that we get to be on with the God who loves us as we are and invites us to trust him and to follow him. And may today be another step in the direction that he has for us. Please pray together with me. So God, thank you for your great love for us. Thank you for who you are and all that you have done on our behalf. And I think we can probably all echo Lillian's words. I didn't start out that great, but all along the way, there's a God who's inviting us to come home, to come to him, to step into the relationship. That's all you're doing from beginning to end. And inside of that, God, may we all discover a little bit more of the great things you have in store for us. So we commit this time and ourselves to you. May our hearts be open to hear what you have to say to us and the direction in which you want to lead us. We ask and pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. So today we're starting a new series entitled Grow, and I'm glad you're here as we get underway, and we want to welcome our friends at the Weber County Jail who tune in on Tuesday nights, and now the Davis County Jail who tune in on Thursday nights, and we are delighted to have you with us as always. And over the next number of weeks, we're going to learn how to grow in some of the defining characteristics of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. There can be a lot of ideas around that. What does that look like? What does that mean? And maybe even if we took a survey in this room, we might come out with all kinds of different ideas. What would it look like? What does someone look like who follows after Jesus and is being transformed in the ways that God wants to transform us? Well, I want us to begin today by thinking about that with some different images that I'm going to show you here in a minute. Each of these images that you're going to see has a different look to it, and it is a group of people that maybe you can identify all of them or some of them. And not only is there a look that you will see, but there's a culture that comes along with that, and you can identify that just by seeing them. So let's take a look. Here's the first one. Just shout it out. This is hippies, right? And if you don't know who they are, ask your parents, because they probably know who that was. And it's not just a look, but there was a whole culture that came along with that. And so it was just defined literally the way it looked, but then also not so literally in the culture that was lived. How about this one? Shout it out. Preppies or yuppies could be the one, right? Yuppies, young urban professionals, and this is kind of like circa 1980 something, and there was a whole way to dress and a whole lifestyle that came along with that, and for the most part, they didn't have any kids because it was all about them. How about this one? Goth, we know that one really well, right? And there's a whole culture that comes along with that, not just literally, but also figuratively. How about this group? This is a group of bikers, right? And there's a certain look and there's a certain culture that often comes along with that. Let me give you one more here. You know who that is? It's Raider Nation, a special case of a little bit off when it comes to the whole football arena. And there is a look and a whole culture. I recommend not sitting in the middle of Raider Nation should you ever go to one of their games. It's a little bit different. Why do we ask that? Because here's the question I want to ask as we start. What is the look for followers of Jesus? Is it literal in the sense that we would all dress the same way, we would all act the same way, we would all talk the same way, we'd all vote the same way? And I would say, no, it's not those things. Something much more profound, something much deeper. And it is the kind of change that God wants to bring about in my heart and in your heart, and ultimately is meant to be the defining characteristics of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Well, where does that come from? It comes from the Bible, and it is sometimes referred to as the fruit of the Spirit, right? God, the Holy Spirit. Where is He taking us? What is He seeking to produce in these hearts and lives of ours? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And against such things, notice this, there is no law. And I think Paul means a lot of things by that. The Apostle Paul, who wrote this, I think one of the implications of that is if this was reality and these characteristics were discovered and lived out across the whole spectrum of a land, a culture, a neighborhood, whatever it might be, we wouldn't need any cops. We wouldn't need to lock our doors. There would be no identity theft. There'd be none of the things that we often think about in this world where we got to be careful, because if this became standard operating procedure, boy, would it be a different place. So what we're going to do in the weeks to come is we're going to unpack one of these each and every time. And today we're going to start with the beginning of that with love. And if there is a characteristic of what God wants to do that I think we need to understand in our day, I think it's this list. And here's why. Because for the most part, the perception, whether it's real or imagined, and I think you could make a case that there's a mixture of both, the perception of what we're doing right now, of who you are, who I am, and what this is all about is so different from this. There's an author, his name is David Kinnaman. He wrote this book several years ago. Now it's called Unchristian. And in it, he tries to understand, what does the culture think of followers of Jesus? Here's some of the top things that he has on his list. Hypocritical, judgmental, way too political, rules-oriented. And I think, boy, whether you want to argue that that's perception or reality, and again, I think it's a little bit of both, that is a long way from what Paul was talking about. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. So how is it that we can move in the direction where more of what is lived out, made real in our lives looks like this? And so each week we're going to take a look at one of those. And I want to tell you something we're going to do through this series as well, the whole way, that if you want to receive some midweek notes, it's going to be on Tuesday morning and Thursday morning. You can text the word GROW to that number and you will automatically get that each week through this whole series. Now, I feel the need to say this because we've done this before, and I'm speaking to people of my generation or a little bit older. Just text the word GROW. Don't text anything else, okay? Don't say, please send me the notes in the middle of the week. That's very kind and gentle of you, but that's not how it works. Just 4 letters, GROW, to that number, and you will get them. And I'm going to put that up again at the end so you can get ready for that. But hopefully, it's an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper in our own time to take another look at how we can grow in these defining characteristics of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. So how are we going to start off with that? Well, we're going to look at love today, and, love is a pretty, easy to define term, right? Wrong. Right, love is this huge word in our language. Here's some things that I love. I love bratwurst. I love my Australian Shepherds, and I love my wife. right? And I think we'd all agree not all those things are the same, right? Please agree with me. Not all those things are the same, right? Okay. So what does it mean when we're talking about love in this context? What did the Apostle Paul mean? Well, to do that, we're going to go to another famous passage where the Apostle Paul defines love in a multifaceted way. And boy, does he put some reality around it that is going to prove to be pretty challenging. And so as we do that, we're also going to discover there are some ways that real life people got confused about how to do that. And he's going to nail some of that. And then he's going to define love for us. Let's read through the whole passage and we're going to break it down. This is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, say these next three words with me, I am nothing. It's pretty strong. And if I give away all that I have, and if I deliver my body up to be burned, but have not love, say these next ones with me, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. Now, my guess is those latter verses there, you're pretty familiar with them, and we most often hear them read at weddings, right? And rightly so, because it is this beautiful, multifaceted understanding of what love is. But I got to tell you this, the Apostle Paul did not just have in mind a man and a woman committing themselves to each other in the bonds of marriage. It's awesome to read it there and apply it there, but that's not what he had in mind. He was writing to real people in a city called Corinth, and it was one of the up-and-coming cities where there were a lot of smart and influential and successful people. And some of them had become followers of Jesus. They put their hope and their trust into who Jesus is. And then as they began to live the life that follows after him, he's writing about what love is. You know why? Because they're not loving like that. And so first he begins by saying, here's some ways you got confused along the way. And then here's a pretty extensive definition of love. So here's what he says at the beginning. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, these are people that have the capability, the God-given capability to do some pretty remarkable, gifted things. And tongues is actually the word that means languages. And so people had been given God-given ability to speak other language. Sometimes they didn't even study it and understand it and know it for themselves. God was just able to do that through them. And there were people around there who said, that's cool, they must be super spiritual. And so those people were put on a pedestal above all the rest because it was a culture that valued giftedness in a high degree. And I would submit to you that we live in a time that also values giftedness in a high degree. And it can be easy for us to attach our connection, our devotion, our following to certain gifts that are expressed in some pretty dramatic ways. And I was reminded a little bit of this, kind of our culture of even, giftedness that has become famous in all kinds of different ways. I think you all know that, this last week there was that tragic helicopter crash that took the life of Kobe Bryant and his daughter, and some other people who were in that helicopter. And in the first days, it was amazing on Facebook, on Twitter, and all kinds of different ways, and certainly on the news. They talked about Kobe and Kobe and Kobe, and then it was kind of Kobe and his daughter. And all the while I'm thinking, there's 7 other people. And I get that we have a connection to somebody, who has become famous. I mean, I've watched him on TVs. I cheered against him at Vivint Smart Home Arena, which is a really strange name for an arena. But I've done that, and maybe you've done that as well. And yet, from God's perspective, 9 precious people were lost in that. But we have this attachment to somebody who is freakishly good at something. I think we live at a time where we can often attach a lot to giftedness on certain levels. And that is nothing new, because in a church in the city of Corinth, Paul is saying, even if I could do that, but I got no love, it's just a whole bunch of noise. It's just a bunch of noise. And that's not the only gifting he points out. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and knowledge, and we know from elsewhere in the New Testament that when Paul talks like that, here's what he's referring to. People who had this God-given ability to either preach or teach and explain the things of the Bible in dramatic, relevant ways. And a lot of people heard that and saw that, and they said, that person needs to be on a pedestal. But what does he say along with that? But if I have all faith and everything, and I don't have love, I have nothing. So by some of the metrics by which we would gauge giftedness to say, man, that person is a gifted person. You know, in my own time, I'll listen to podcasts and things like that of different speakers and pastors from around the country. And many times I'm drawn just to their giftedness, and certain ones resonate with me, and my guess is, you know, that works for you as well. And I think what Paul's telling us here is that's great, but you know what is really important? Is the life that's lived underneath that. Is love even present? And a lot of times we just focus in on a gift and we overlook all the rest. And it may be there, it may not. But Paul's saying if it's not, we got nothing. And he goes on to talk about a special kind of faith, even the faith to remove mountains. This is not normal faith, whatever that is. It is a dramatic, inspiring, willing to trust God for big things kind of faith. And people look and say, man, I wish I could trust God like that person, like him or her. And so they were put on a pedestal. And what is Paul saying with all of this? Don't confuse a gifted life with a loving life. And boy, sometimes we can really be drawn to gifts. And we can overlook what Paul says, man, if we don't have the love, we got nothing. Tim Keller is a pastor and an author, and he said this about, our day. In our American culture right now, what matters? Are you smart? Are you the best? Do you produce? Are you winning? Do you meet your goals? So what if you're cranky or irritable? You're just a character, eccentric. In whatever context you can think, what matters is winning. How it's done is secondary. And Paul's saying to a very gifted group of people, hey, all the metrics can be in place. You got great preaching and teaching and gifts on full display. This could be growing and increasing. And you know what, at the end of the day? You could still be a jerk for Jesus, doing all the stuff in his name. But if there is not this transformation behind it and this life lived out, we got nothing. It's just a bunch of noise. But he's not only going to say that we can get confused about gifting, he's also going to move into the arena of morality. If I give away all that I have, and I think we would look at somebody who does that, they are not just giving a handout to somebody on occasion. They're willing to give away everything they have to live remarkably different so that other people could live remarkably different. And we would go, well, isn't that, what it's really all about? And isn't that, a big part of what faith is all about? And certainly there's an aspect of that. And I think we could, kind of call this maybe the liberal side of social living, where you go, man, I'd admire somebody like that. They're not just saying it. They're actually doing it. They get sold everything so that other people could live differently. That's pretty amazing. But if I have not love, I gain nothing. And then he goes to the other side of the whole equation. If I deliver my body up to be burned, this is somebody who's going to stand for what's right and what's true. They're even willing to give up their own life to defend what is true and right. And we would go, man, that is admirable. It's kind of a conservative side of that, where I'm going to stand for what's right and I'm not going to let untruth infiltrate all that is right and good. But if I have not love, I gain nothing. And we might say, well, what might motivate people to do that? Why would you give away everything you have if it wasn't for the right motives? Why would you allow yourself, to even have your life come to an end if it wasn't for the right reasons? And we may wonder, what would motivate somebody to do that if it's not legitimate? And it's easy to go by that. I think Paul gives us a hint in verse 1. If I speak in the tongues of men and angels but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. That is drawn right from the culture in Corinth, where in the pagan temples people would gather and they had gongs and cymbals. Must have been interesting to be there. And they would start playing them. And you know what they were doing? Crash, bang. They were trying to get the attention of the gods. To say, look, we venerate you, this is all about you. They were getting the attention of the gods in the belief that then the gods would come through in the way that they deemed appropriate. It was to manipulate, it was to do something, to get something. And Paul says, you know when that happens? It's just noise. And yet there were things being done, moral things, good things. But without love, it amounts to nothing. And so Paul first said, don't confuse a gifted life with a loving life. Here he's saying, don't confuse a moral life with a loving life. Gifts are good, morality's good. But if love is not there, we got nothing. And then he goes on to give the description of what love is, and we're not going to read through this again, but boy, there are a lot of descriptors around that, aren't there? And here's kind of the common theme that runs through that, is that it is not what we often describe of when we think about love. A lot of times love is this emotion, and who can control their emotion? But love is this hard to define thing. You can't nail it to the wall. You can't quantify it. And it's this feeling that can come and go a lot of times, but a lot of times it's just personal. And the thread that runs through here is that it's about relationships. Love is patient. Literally, what he says is love suffers long. And not suffers in silence and suffers alone. It is the idea that it suffers with each other. That I suffer with you and you suffer with me and with each other. And love is kind. Can you be kind to yourself? I guess you can. I wonder if a lot of expressions of that are just selfishness. But kindness has the idea of relationship and making itself real in real life. It does not envy or boast, right? Envy is desiring what somebody else has. It's not just something that lives inside of me. Boasting is me inflating my view of myself to manage your impressions of me, right? It is to become something that I'm really not, to maybe influence you in a certain direction. And from beginning to end, all of this is about relationships. And as you look at that, you think, man, that's a big list. We better get after it. And I don't know if that's your tendency, but it is mine. I think, wow, I thought we were just talking about love, but now it's got patience, kindness, no envy, no boasting, not arrogant, no rude. And it continues on. Well, then let's get after it. Where's the list? Let's get busy. And can I just tell you, that's not how it happens. The way to accomplish this is not for us to roll up our sleeves and to say, give me the list and let's start doing stuff that will make us more like this. The description goes on. He talks about love bears all things, love believes all things, which, by the way, sometimes is confusing. People say, does that mean love just to believe anything under the sun? Because not everything is the same. Believes all things, again, is an interpersonal word that talks about believing the best about other people. It is relational. And as we make our way all the way through this, we may think, man, it's overwhelming, but if that's what we got to do, then let's go for it. And I know that I'm wired that way, and maybe you are too. I can think back to the days when I was running, and if I wanted to get ready for a marathon, here's the way that I would do it. There was a sheet that I could print out, and it was either 12 weeks or 16 weeks of what you needed to do every day, how far you needed to run, and how fast. And if you follow that plan, at the end of those 16 weeks, you would be ready for race day. And great, there it is. Either I did it or I didn't do it. And if we try to bring that mindset to our understanding of how we grow spiritually and these hearts of ours are transformed, we're not going to get there. And you know why? Because what that effort is really all about is willpower. It's about our efforts to transform these hearts of ours. But real love is relational. The way that it plays out is relational with each other. The way that it happens and all of those descriptors become more real in my life and in yours is also relational. Because only God can produce that kind of fruit. You and I don't have what it takes. But the danger of anything in the spiritual arena is that we turn it into religion. What is religion? Here's the advice about the things that you need to do in order to work your way to God. And so let's get after it and let's get busy. But all the while, there's a God who invites us to come to Him. The God who can transform us. Here's what one author, Scott Saul, says about this. We must preoccupy ourselves less with trying to be like Jesus. What's wrong with that? And more with simply being with Him. See, the first part is, where's the list? What do I need to do? Yep, I'm doing it. I'm accomplishing it. I'm achieving it. And we need to simply focus more on being with Him. For when we've been with Him, we will become like Him. The fruit of the Spirit is caught, not achieved. And I got to tell you, I can get hung up on that last word there. And it leads us to the end of ourselves, because then it's all about my willpower to try to do what only God can do. So you want a strategy to love more like Jesus loves and to see that fruit produced in your heart? I do. Don't follow a strategy. Follow a person. Get closer to Jesus. You know, there's some study around this that in different parts of the world, there's some children who are given up for adoption, and many of them are in orphanages, even as newborn babies. And, you know, there are people who go in at various times, and, you know, again, some study around this that proves this to be true. That children who grow up without somebody holding them, without somebody cooing to them, without somebody talking to them and letting them know that they are valuable, that they are important, even if they can't understand the words, makes it very difficult for those children, once they grow up, to love. How do we learn to love? By being loved. Here's what the New Testament tells us. Here's how God demonstrated His love for us. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Did we do anything for God to show us His love? The answer is no. He did it because of who He is. And there's nothing that we can achieve that would make God respond to us any differently than He already does, because it's who He is. And so God rescues us from beginning to end. And you know what else He does? He transforms us from beginning to end. Now, in both of those arenas, we can join Him, we can cooperate with Him, but we cannot achieve anything. And so how do we become more loving? We spend time with Him. And so I'm not going to give you 3 steps to become a more loving person, because I think that's exactly the wrong response to all of this. But I would invite you, and I'd invite myself. How are you going to get closer to Him? Because if we want to love more like Jesus loves, you want to get closer to that? Get closer to Jesus. Because in the context of that relationship with a real God, He transforms us, and we are made over. Many times, you know, we'll say this expression, and I know I've said it in one way or another, and maybe you have too, that my biggest problem is I don't love God enough. And there are plenty of examples of how I can love God more. But I don't believe that's our biggest problem. I believe our biggest problem is that we don't know how much God loves us. Think about it. The holy, perfect God knows you and me exactly the way that we are. All the secrets, all the stuff that we've managed to keep out of the eyes of people around us even. all of the desires that we've ever had, all the motivations we've ever entertained, all the hurtful things, that we've thought, all of it. And he loves you. He loves us in spite of who we are. And he invites you to come close. And in the context of that relationship, when we discover more what it means to be loved by God, we can be more transformed to love more like God does. But we will not accomplish it on our own. And it's not about willpower. It's about drawing close to God. And the impact of what that might mean in this world, I think, is a significant one. And maybe one way to illustrate that for you a little bit, I got 2 chairs here. One is a church chair, just like the one that you're sitting in. And then it's a different kind of chair, right? It's a bar stool. And I wonder, though, if this bar stool could represent 1,000 different chairs that people might sit in our world. But I have a bar stool up here because I used to sit in a bar stool, not in church, if you know what I mean. And what is it that people encounter when they come in contact with people who are followers of Jesus? And that's not a foregone conclusion. Paul says, you know where God's going and where he's taken us and what it means to be a follower of his? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. But I don't know that that's always the case. I remember years ago, I was working at a construction company and I had a friend. His marriage was hanging on by a thread. They had a newborn baby, and the prospect of losing all of that was weighing heavy on him. And I said, hey, why don't you come to church with me someday? And his words have stayed with me ever since. He goes, I already feel bad enough about myself. Why would I want to go there? Now, we can argue, is that perception? Is that reality? I don't know. To him, it was real. And these are some of the words that Jesus spoke. This is how the world will know that you are my followers. Does it have to do with incredible gifting? Does it have to do with morality? Those are good things. It's not what he said on that day. Jesus said, this is how the whole world will know that you are my disciples. That you have love for one another. And I don't know about you, but I know that there is room for growth in this heart and life of mine. And how's that going to happen? I can't accomplish that, and neither can you. So I don't have a to-do list for you. But I would encourage you to think, what are the things, or what is the thing that will take you closer to him? So maybe spending some time during the week, and maybe that's a new thing for you. So maybe getting plugged into a small group so some of those one another things, can be lived out in real life, that we don't just know about them in our minds, but we're actually doing it. I don't know what the answer is for you, and I really hesitate to give you just a list, because I don't think it's about a list. And probably the answers are different as the people in this room. But I would invite us this coming week to think about what will take me closer to the God who loves me unconditionally and in spite of myself, the only one who can transform me to become more loving like he is. And the results of that can't overstate how important the impact is. But it's found not in ourselves. It's found in drawing close to the God who's already loved us. Would you bow your heads together with me as I pray? So God, thank you for who you are. And to think that you would leave heaven for people like us. And it was all you're doing before we'd ever taken one step in your direction. You loved us like that. And God, help us to know that it's only with you, close to you, that we can truly discover the kind of transformation that we can never pull off on our own. So God, lead us all closer to you. And may we discover your power at work to make us more like you. So lead us in that direction, God, for your name's sake. May it be only to your honor and glory. And so we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. I want to put that text number back up here so you can see it as you head out. Thanks for being here. And we have a meet and greet room over here. And if you got a couple minutes and you're new, would love to spend just a couple minutes with you, get to know you. Have a great week and enjoy the Super Bowl. We'll see you soon.